I want you to imagine a superhighway inside you, one that's way more complex than any you've ever driven on. It's open 24/7, there are no traffic lights, and it carries trillions of packages to something like 37 trillion different destinations every single day. That highway, that's your circulatory system. And today, we're going to take a little road trip to figure out how it all works.
So let's start with a really basic question. Why go through all this trouble? Why can't we just be like a simple little amoeba and, soak up all the oxygen and nutrients we need right through our skin? You'd think that would be a whole lot easier, right?
Well, the answer really boils down to a problem of scale. If you're just a single cell, yeah, direct exchange is a piece of cake. But for a massive, complex creature like a human, most of our cells are buried deep inside, miles away from the outside world, relatively speaking. Simple diffusion, just letting things soak in, would be way, way too slow to keep them alive. To survive, we absolutely need a dedicated delivery network.
And of course, every great delivery network needs an engine. For our internal highway, that central engine is the heart, a powerful, tireless muscle that is literally the pump driving this entire system. What's so fascinating is how this engine has evolved for efficiency. A fish, for example, has a simple 2-chamber pump. Blood just passes through once per cycle. An amphibian kicks it up to 3 chambers, but there's a design flaw. The oxygen-rich blood gets mixed with the oxygen-poor blood. But the human heart? Oh, it's a masterpiece. 4 chambers, with a thick, muscular wall, the septum, that completely separates the two sides. This creates what's called a complete double circulation system, and it is incredibly efficient.
So how does this amazing pump know when to beat? It's all driven by this perfectly timed electrical signal. It all starts in a tiny spot called the SA node. That's the heart's natural pacemaker, which sends out a little electrical spark. That spark makes the top 2 chambers, the atria, squeeze. The signal then travels down to the AV node and shoots through these special fibers, telling the big, powerful lower chambers, the ventricles, to contract just a split second later. It's just a perfect, rhythmic electrical wave. And that familiar love-dub sound you hear when you listen to a heartbeat, it's actually not the sound of the muscle working. It's the sound of the heart's little one-way doors, its valves, snapping shut in perfect time. That's what keeps the blood flowing in the right direction. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so we've got our engine, but what about the cargo? What is this powerful pump actually pushing through all those vessels in our bodies? Well, it's time to take a closer look at the living river we call blood. The first thing that might surprise you is that blood is mostly liquid. Yep, a full 55% of your blood is this yellowish fluid called plasma. The other 45% is where you find all the different cells doing the work. And this is where our highway analogy really clicks. The plasma is the liquid road itself. Then you've got the red blood cells, the erythrocytes. Those are your millions of tiny oxygen delivery trucks. The white blood cells are leukocytes. They're like the system's security force, constantly patrolling for invaders. And the platelets, they're the emergency repair crew, ready to patch up a leak at a moment's notice. So we've got the engine, and we've got the cargo. Now we need the actual roads. And let me tell you, this network of roadways it's just vast, it's intricate, and it's perfectly designed for the job. And not all of these roads are built the same. You've got arteries. Think of these as the major interstates, carrying blood away from the heart at high pressure. That's why they need thick, muscular walls. Then you have the veins, which are the return roads bringing blood back to the heart. The pressure here is much lower, so they have thinner walls, but they also have these clever one-way valves to stop blood from flowing backwards. And finally, the capillaries. These are the tiny little neighborhood streets where the actual deliveries and pickups happen. Their walls are only 1 cell thick, which makes it super easy for stuff to pass right through. Okay, now this is where the system gets really, really clever. Even in those tiny little capillaries, the pressure from the heartbeat is still strong enough to literally squeeze some of the liquid plasma right through those paper-thin walls. This fluid, we call it tissue fluid, leaks out and bathes all of our cells, delivering all the goodies they need. 15%. Now, most of that fluid, about 85% of it, gets sucked back into the capillaries a little further down the road. But that leaves 15% behind, just hanging out between our cells. If that lost fluid just kept building up, we'd swell up like a balloon. So where does it go? Well, the answer is a whole separate parallel highway system running right alongside our blood vessels, the lymphatic system. You can think of it as the body's ultimate drainage and recycling plant. It collects all that extra fluid, which is now called lymph, filters it for any bad guys, and then safely dumps it right back into the bloodstream,
Just an absolutely elegant solution.
This whole system is incredibly robust. It really is. But just like any highway, it's not immune to problems. So what happens when you get traffic jams, breakdowns, or damage to these critical roads? First, let's talk about road repair. The second you get a cut, your body kicks off this amazing chemical chain reaction. A series of proteins get activated one after the other like dominoes falling. The final crucial step is when an enzyme turns a protein that's normally dissolved in your blood into these sticky, insoluble fibers. Those fibers form a net, or a mesh, that traps blood cells, plugs the hole, and stops the leak. But, the really dangerous problems are often the ones that happen slowly, from the inside out. Atherosclerosis is just the steady buildup of plaque, this nasty mix of cholesterol and fats on the inner walls of our arteries. Honestly, just think of it like sludge building up in a pipe, year after year.
And over time, that plaque buildup makes the highway narrower and narrower, creating a really dangerous bottleneck for blood flow. And this inevitably leads to hypertension, high blood pressure. It's just simple physics, right? The heart has to pump way, way harder to force the same amount of blood through a much smaller opening. And that puts a constant, relentless strain on both the heart muscle and the artery walls themselves.
And that constant strain, that high pressure, it dramatically increases the risk of a catastrophic failure. A piece of that plaque could break loose and cause a complete traffic jam in one of the heart's own supply roads. That's a heart attack. Or the pressure could become so great that a delicate vessel in the brain just bursts. And that's a stroke.
So when you really stop and think about it, this incredible superhighway inside you never, ever stops. It runs 24/7 every single day of your life, making trillions upon trillions of critical deliveries. It is, without a doubt, the most important piece of infrastructure you will ever own. So the final question is a simple one. How are you maintaining the roads?